I think we ended on capital, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Okay, so, and we had a lot of questions, so it was capital, grants and opportunities team, and then general discussion, but you, Kevin, what do we add?
Yep, so we're gonna pick up with capital, and then we'll do the grants team. And then I put together an additional 6 slides just to circle back on some operational budget questions that I'll run through, and then we'll do general discussion to wrap up.
Okay. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with capital, and, yeah, we'll go ahead and get started with capital.
Let's do it.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
Where,
Capital is it's a bigger tab at the end. You go ahead.
okay, all right. This is an overall look at the total capital budget. We often focus on that top line, general government, at that 48 million, but important to consider our enterprise funds, solid waste, stormwater, and wastewater. You can see the total there across it.
And Eric, I think it's an
Yeah.
important distinction. So for solid waste, for stormwater, and for wastewater, they have their own capital budgets. And so the capital budget that is gonna be the primary focus of our conversation right now is the general government capital budget, that's the 48 million.
Thank you.
Here's a breakdown of the funding for resources for just that piece that Kevin was mentioning, the general government. We're using a variety of sources, general obligation funds, economic development, the hotel motel tax, et cetera, as well as some specific use funds going through that. Detailed in the budget document itself, how those are being allocated to the various projects. This is a slightly different breakdown. We can look at it by department as well, but I think it's a little helpful to look at functional area because some departments are focusing on multiple areas. You can see the breakdown of projects across each of those areas as well as the dollars associated with those. Totaling 48 million.
How are we doing questions, just so
Oh, as we continue, so just jot them down, and as we get to the end of each
Okay.
section, we'll answer those. And if we don't have the answer, if it goes a little too deep, we'll get it. Kim is capturing all of the questions, and then we'll come back and make sure you have the answer that you need. Okay.
Okay, this is a selection of projects. Obviously, there are more projects detailed in the budget document itself. This is just a highlight of some that we wanted to call out. Starting at the top with paving, going through, and again, we can dive into each of these. One additional slide will dive into each of these or other projects as well.
Eric, can I
Yeah.
frame it up a little bit?
Sure,
So just to remind everybody, we talked about this in your individual 101 budget meetings that we had. So obviously, the demand for capital exceeds access to capital, right? That's kind of like a recurring theme. What we did in putting together this year's proposed capital budget is we filtered every request through the question, do we have to do this in fiscal year 26? Like, are we compelled? And if so, for what reason are we compelled? And if that reason was good enough, then we checked down and asked the question, okay, are we compelled to fund it at the requested level? Or is there a little bit of a cash flow play that we could run to manage this year's costs? And in some cases, there was, which will be reflected and we'll talk through. But in many of the cases, there wasn't any wiggle room. And so we are funding some of these projects at their full requested levels. And then the upside, in some cases, which Eric will talk about, is that because we're funding them at their full requested levels in this year, we're actually paying them off, which is going to create capital capacity for us in subsequent fiscal years.
Yeah, and just to put that in a little bit of context, I know it's the same with the operating budget, but the total request from departments for the general government funds is about 215 million. Obviously, that has come down pretty significantly to about a quarter, less than a quarter of what that was. So yes, our needs are exceeding the available funds and makes it difficult. And to call this payoffs, these are projects that are examples of, and there's some additional ones too, projects that because of the investment that we are making this year in them, we will not see these again to be able to create space for those. So these projects will be able to move forward fully funded at the requested levels. Some of these projects are ones that have been funded over multiple years, and this would be the final year to get us across the finish line with those. Yeah,
All
final
right, so,
slide for capital.
thank you so much, Eric. So
Yeah.
any questions, council, regarding the capital budget that we need to address?
I have a couple.
Yes, Councilman Elliott.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Can I get a breakdown of how much we've allocated, whether direct funds or property, to the AIM Center in the last 12 years?
Yes, I think that is already included. So yesterday evening, I sent out to everybody follow-ups from last week's questions.
Okay.
In that
Okay,
deck, there is a slide on agencies.
Okay.
And on that slide, there's a link to a document called Agency Workbook, which
Okay.
is a spreadsheet with various tabs. One of the tabs is a 15-year look back for all agencies that are receiving funding in this
Perfect.
budget.
Perfect. And one more. Can you explain a little bit more what the pension software is?
Yes.
Just curious.
Wesson, help me out here, but basically, right now, the pension is managed without software. I think that it's functionally an Excel document.
Well, archaic.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And so what we're doing with this project, which is funded through the pension, so it's not actually charged against the general government capital.
Taking it from the pension.
But what they're gonna do is they're going to do a data migration from Excel effectively into software.
Okay.
And so the reason that it's such a high cost, because it's not only the licensing for that software,
Implementation.
it's the implementation and making sure that the data migration happens with integrity, right? And
Perfect.
so the company's experts are gonna help us make sure that that's the case. So it's not gonna be like, we have a license, we turn it on, and now we can just like export and import. It's not that simple. It's like a whole data migration project. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Thank you. That's all, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you so much, Councilman Elliott. Councilwoman Burris, followed by Councilman Hart.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question about the riverfront improvements. What's the difference between the funds for riverfront improvements and the 21st Century Waterfront capital project?
The 21st Century Waterfront capital projects are historic projects from when that was originally done a
Okay.
few decades ago.
Okay.
There was some funds that were held in reserve for longer-term repairs that have not needed to be made, fortunately, over time, in order to be able to use those funds to have them go towards the current riverfront project. We need to just reallocate them as a part of the budget. So that's why it's showing a reduction in those and an increase in the riverfront project, which is the one that is being done in conjunction with River City, has received some state.
And what's the, kind of late to the party on the riverfront redesign? So a lot of this may have been explained in public meetings and other meetings with the council, but what's the expected return on investment for this 2.75 right now for the riverfront parks redevelopment?
So that's interesting. I don't have a number off the top of my head. I will check with folks to see if there is one. Conceptually, though, we know that the riverfront is a major driver of economic activity. It has been since the aquarium.
Right.
You know, it's kind of been the linchpin for the downtown revitalization that has occurred since '92, and then the redo in, I think, '05. And so we are viewing this as kind of the next evolution of further enhancing the riverfront to drive even more economic impact. So by introducing more publicly usable space, more play space, we're gonna ostensibly attract more families downtown to come and utilize that space. There's going to be restaurants and other retail options. Continue to drive traffic to the aquarium and that whole area. And then, you know, subsequently, depending on what happens with Hawk Hill and the retail options that are gonna pop up there, it's gonna be an entire ecosystem that is driving economic impact as more and more people come down and utilize it.
So how does that compare to the economic impact of tourism and things that bring people to the waterfront? Has there been a comparison, like, perfect example, Ironman? You have an event where you had people who not only came downtown and ate at restaurants, they also stayed at hotels, and they were here for, 3 and 4 days. How does that compare with what we're talking about, creating this space that hopefully brings local folks downtown to what we might lose as a result of overbuilding the waterfront?
So just real, I
Yeah.
just kind of answered them just because I work with River City
Yeah.
Company and with Emily
Yeah.
Mack. So what we can get you is, River City Company has already done the work on it, so we can get you the, Riverfront Parks Plan.
Okay.
Which will have all that information in there. And then the Chattanooga Tourism Company actually does the comparison when it comes to the tourist dollars and kind of how they match up against the investments that we make. So we can get you all that information,
Okay.
and I know Kim is taking great notes, so make sure that you have that plan, the Riverfront Parks Plan, and then the data from the tourism company, because that's something that we all, if you're gonna put the money down there, then what's the return on investment of it? So we will gather that
Okay.
information. What are any other questions about particularly that? That's, I don't wanna get too deep into
Well, I'm just,
projects I
I'm
don't know.
thinking about allocation of funds, if we're looking for ways that, where there's some areas that might need more funding right now, that's more of a, something that might have more of an, if you're talking about providing a place for local people to come that might provide a space for them, but we also have needs that citizens are looking for to improve their neighborhoods, or
Sure.
to improve, $2.75 million.
Sure.
Is that something that has to be in this year's budget? That's where I'm going with that.
Yes. So in addition to the follow-ups that
And I'm
we'll-
not picking on your district.
Everybody does.
I just, yeah, I
That's
know.
where the money is.
Yeah, I know, but I'd like to see the comparison.
Sure, and we can get that for you. I would just real quick want to say that, stepping back and thinking about it holistically, so yes, there is kind of a local play, but it's also a supplement to the attractions that already attract tourism, right? So it's a both and as net new people, more people come into town, that generates more available revenue through hotel motel tax collections, which is to the benefit of the whole city, right? And so it's kind of one of those, it's an ecosystem downtown that is a revenue creator for the city that allows us to fund projects in other places where revenue is not necessarily generated at the same level.
Okay. And are those plans, the River City or the redesign, are those plans in stone?
Yeah, they've
Okay.
worked, they've
Okay.
been working on those for a couple of years now,
Okay.
so they
I'd
are,
appreciate seeing them, yeah.
they're in more of the fundraising, they have the different, you get a chance to see, it's really neat, different porches and different things they wanna do, cause the next phase now is really looking at Hawk Hill and seeing how we can, make sure that's, what we need downtown, so.
Okay.
But definitely wanna get you that information for the riverfront plans, as well as the data from the Chattanooga Tourism Company, because I think maybe a year or so ago, we also did, just what is our capacity for larger conventions and different spaces like that, just so you
Perfect.
can have more of an idea of like where we're leaning toward and where we're going, and then comparing to the investment that the city actually make into it, so.
Thank you, Madam
Yes,
Chair.
ma'am. We'll make sure we get that. Any other questions about it, or anything about, any additional information? Now, just about this, because I don't know about everything. I don't know about
Let me
everything.
see,
I just
let
know
me
this one
see.
particularly.
I made a note about rental rehab.
Okay.
Well, yeah, what is, rental rehab, parking to provide grants and low cost. Okay, never mind, that answered my question.
Okay, all right.
I think that's all I have right now, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Burrs, followed by Councilman Harvey, and then Councilman Clark and Madam Chair. Is that right? All right.
Can you all expand a little bit on the Better Government Fund for me, what that entails?
What page is that on?
C1.
This is one of the functional areas that we look at. Again, we have the budget broken down by department so that we can allocate appropriately, but I think it is helpful to have areas of focus because they cross multiple departments. So really want this one to be how we are functioning as a government, making sure that we are operating effectively, coming out of the One Chattanooga plan is really important. So the 3 projects that are in there, making sure that we can continue to move forward with the City Hall Annex renovation so that we can bring people back into that space and really fully utilize it. The courts building repairs is the city's match for repairs that are happening at the city courts building.
So that's a match.
That's correct, yeah, that's correct. And similarly to when there are county staff who work in joint city buildings like the Development Resource Center, we share those costs with that. And then the HR pension software Kevin was discussing earlier.
And so, Councilman Harvey, these are not additional projects and an additional amount. This is us kind of categorizing the projects in the capital budget into different categories.
And then to piggyback off of what Councilwoman Burrs was saying, I'd like to know specifically what the 21st Century Waterfront capital projects are. Like, I understand it's the waterfront, but what
Yep,
specifically?
sure. There's a whole plan, and we will happily connect you with Emily Mack. We'll provide it ourselves, but she can walk you through
Okay.
kind of each phase and different sections, et cetera, of the plan.
Okay, very good. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, McGowan. Thank you, Councilman Harvey. Councilman Clark.
Thank you, Councilwoman Donnelly. I'd like to go back to, I've got a question about the riverfront improvement and the waterfront capital projects. How does that fall in line with the allocations that just came from the state? I know I've gotten an invitation to do some type of unveiling.
Yep.
How does this coincide with this?
It helps with moving some of those parts forward with Governor Lee coming down to present the dollars. That's for the riverfront plan. That's a part of that riverfront. There are certain, have you seen the plan or anything?
I have.
Okay, so it's one of the they're investing into one of the porches, one of the phases of the project is what the state is doing, from my understanding.
Yep, so Councilman Clark, so it's a huge project, right? So, rough estimates, probably a $50 million project. And so there's a capital stack associated with that. The city can't fund that all on its own. So
Sure.
the city is committing dollars, the county is committing dollars, and then the most recent meeting of the General Assembly through Governor Lee's budget allocated $15 million towards it, which is a historic investment from the state to the city of Chattanooga specifically for this project to help us bring it to reality, right? And so, in addition to approximately $25 million that we already have, when you combine those 3 elements that I just talked about, there's also a private component. And so there's a fundraising consultant that River City is engaging that is actively working on going and getting private dollars to come in and round out the funding for the project.
So I guess my question is that if that is happening, what is the basis for these extra allocations from 21st Century and River? Like, I guess what I'm getting at is kind of piggybacking what Councilman Harvey and Councilwoman Burrs mentioned, is that when we're talking about budgeting for priorities or what we need, I guess in my district, we're having a hard time. Sorry, Ronald. I'm sorry. I've had no sleep at all. And my grandmother passed yesterday, so I'm trying to get through this. What is the priority for us to continue to put dollars into the riverfront when we have other priorities in neighborhoods and public safety? I need to be able to explain that in my district because I don't see it as I think the riverfront is great. I hear the conversation around why we put money into tourism that goes into the motel hotel tax that's put money back into general funds. But when we look at how our growth, right? There's other ways to fund government, people. We want people to come here, and we've always have used the riverfront as the only carrot to say, come here, spend money in Chattanooga and our hotels. I think and I kind of mentioned this last week when we were spending $500,000 with River City, and this is not a dig at River City or the riverfront. I would like to understand how this is a priority.
Sure.
that we keep putting funds into the riverfront as if something's wrong with it or it's a necessity, when we're looking at other projects in our communities, you know, in my community, especially when our city's not growing at a pace that's competitive with Clarksville, Murfreesboro, and Knoxville, and they don't have a riverfront. You know, Murfreesboro has a little small town square, and they're doing perfectly fine outpacing Chattanooga. So my question, again, is that with the investments from the state, you know, is it necessary to continue these type of allocations towards our riverfront in times when budget priorities is not to give our, you know, I guess our front door, you know, a renovation, if not one is necessarily needed?
Yeah.
So,
So I
I
would say,
mean-
yep, I understand the question, and I would say at least three things. One, we know that the riverfront, so if you think about Chattanooga's economy, tourism is a critical component of the things that comprise the economic engine of our city, right? And so tourism will continue to be an important component of economic activity here, and so the riverfront has proven itself to be a major draw. And so this is a reinvestment into an asset that has proven for 30-plus years.
Do we have data that supports
We
that?
did, well, sure, we do,
So,
absolutely.
so basically, you're saying people are coming to Chattanooga to go to our riverfront.
I'm saying that it is a major draw for folks to come and visit Chattanooga. And then there are positive knock-on effects of that, right? Because people are coming to go to the aquarium and to visit our riverfront, it opens up opportunities for additional businesses, right? To want to relocate proximal to that activity to capture some of that foot traffic, right? And so it creates kind of a virtuous cycle in that way. Secondly, I would say that the reason that the state is coming in with $15 million is exactly because the city and the county are continuing to invest in the project, right? So if we were to no longer invest in it, well, then we wouldn't have gotten the $15 million because the state's not gonna come in and, you know, and pay for something if we're not putting skin in the game. And then thirdly, relative to the cost of the project and its economic impact over time, it's really asymmetric upside return for the city, right? So if we're talking about 5 million, 10 million, whatever it is, ultimately when you add it all up over time, against a $50 million project, in light of its disproportionate positive return, then it's absolutely a worthy endeavor that Mayor Kelly is very supportive of, as is the county, as is the state, because it is an economic driver for the city.
And I'm not arguing that it's not an economic driver. I just think how long do we do this when we have other areas and neighborhood safeties and stuff? Like how long do we continue to keep giving the riverfront, which I think is great as it is right now. It's been attracting tourism here, and I think people come to Chattanooga for various things other than just going to our sports events,
sure.
our outdoors stuff, things that are not on the river. You know, people are going to Ooltewah down Cambridge Square.
Yeah.
And so I just would like for us to think in different terms of how long, like what is the cost benefits analysis to continue to keep investing when we have the state coming in and say, hey, we like your riverfront, we want to help you, which is great because we pay taxes to the state as well. I welcome the federal government to come in and help make our riverfront awesome. But I guess what I would like to understand maybe is more of a cost benefit analysis of what we have done historically to continue to do that. And when does the pendulum change to where we say, you know, we've done a great job with the riverfront. Now let's go to, you know, Avondale and or other places, because ultimately it's the people.
Yeah.
You know, people are drawn to cities for good schools and safe communities.
Yeah.
Not just your tourism dollars.
Sure.
I think we should balance it out to where we're just not luring people in just because of our riverfront, but because it's just a great place to be, even if we didn't have a riverfront, because there's cities that don't have riverfronts and they're doing perfectly fine without it. So I'd love for us to, as we're budgeting for priorities, just think about, you know, as I look at these two expenditures, 27 million in riverfront improvements, another million in waterfront capital project, and then what the state is doing. I just wonder if there's an opportunity as Chip would say, to, take a good haircut to see if we could do some other improvements in some other areas that need it. So I'd love to see a cost-benefit analysis, and maybe it's just my ignorance. We talked about the economic engine of the riverfront. I would love to see a report on that.
Let me do this, because it's getting a little deep in, and we have other things that we need to discuss. So, Councilman Clark, just so I'm clear, you would like a cost-benefit analysis of the economic impact of the riverfront? And then, and we can do that in comparison to every district. So with all the districts and looking at the economic impact of all the districts, and maybe that can do a better picture of why that's so, why that's our major investing area. So we'll make sure we get that. And Kim, you got it down?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so cost benefit analysis about that, and I also have the other questions from Councilman Harvey as well as Councilwoman Burrs. Are there any other questions? Oh, Councilman Clark, any other questions outside of the request for the cost benefit analysis? I feel like.
No, I do have,
I'm sorry, and you had asked, what is the priority to put money into the riverfront? So do you still want that, or is the cost benefit analysis?
that would be in the cost-benefit analysis.
All right, any other questions?
So we can remind people like why we continuously do this on a yearly basis.
Right.
Which I don't think is a bad question, because if there is one,
It
we
is.
need to be singing that song into our districts.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's not, it's just that in a time when we are talking about constraints on budget, I just wonder if it's just like, if I live in a house and my house is perfectly fine,
I mean, we
and I don't wanna do like a renovation, would I do a renovation in the middle of a recession? You know what I mean? And so that's my analysis of it, and I'm getting that question a lot. And I know that's your district, which is fine, but we all share some of the cost benefits of visiting District 7. I wish I had a riverfront. I have a lake in my district. I'd love for you guys to put some money in my lake on Highway 58, but.
Do you have any other questions?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you so much, Councilman Clark. Madam Chair?
Oh, it's me already, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have several somewhat granular, specific questions about capital budget. But what I'd kind of like to start at, actually, is when we think about our 5-year capital budget, I look at that capital budget and I use that to forecast, here's what I can expect to happen. And in my district, a very important project is the Dartmouth 5 Points watershed work. And there's a $500,000 in the stormwater capital allocation for that. And in the 25 budget, it was proposed that in 26 we would have $2 million for that project, with the expectation that there'd be a $4.5 million 5-year total for that. In the 24 budget, it was expected that we would put $2 million and change in 25, 2.2 million in 2026, and we would actually have $6,260,000 in that bucket for that project. And as we think about priorities, this area floods, and it's not gonna flood less this year because we only put $500,000 in it when we said we were gonna put $2 million in it. So I want to have some feedback from you all on the usefulness of that 5-year plan, right? Because I'm looking at this to project out of like, okay, I can expect that by X date, we're not gonna flood at 5 Points anymore, right? And it takes a solid year to design the project, and it takes another year to do the project, and how many more years are we gonna flood? And what I'm seeing in this budget is, we're gonna flood for a long time, because we're only putting $500,000 in. And when you gave me the printout last week, Dartmouth wasn't even on that, so I don't know how much money is in that bucket.
Okay.
So talk to me about, and for all of us, the usefulness of the 5-year. How often are we diverting from what we say our plan is? And when can I expect Dartmouth to get done?
Those are two separate things.
Yes.
Take the first one first.
Okay.
I like the 5-year plan. It's not, the first year is fiscally constrained, obviously, with the budget in exact alignment with this year's budget. the other 4 years in it, they aren't fiscally constrained, but they are, to our best guess, built around what we anticipate our revenues will be each of those 4 years. Sometimes that changes. The enterprise funds are a little bit different, but to speak about the general fund, we are seeing differences in what our available capital revenue sources are this year compared to what we thought last year. So it is smaller this year's budget compared to what the CIP was last year. But it is a good guide for where we need to be and where we're going, as we know it when we present you with the budget, city council with the budget. There are changes that are made, and this could be due, we'll dig into Dartmouth a little bit more in particular, based on project development. Projects are phased out over that time based on anticipated project delivery milestones. Sometimes based on the project, those may change over time if there are delays, or sometimes accelerations to move those forward. But we really try to work with the departments to ensure that we have their best plan for when they need the dollars, because we don't have extra dollars that we can allocate and just sit on over time. Those dollars both lose their value, and we have plenty of other priorities that those need to be there for. So we really try to work with, in the coming years, next year, the following year, are you able to spend these dollars that you have received, and are you going to be working with those over time?
Okay, let me say back to you what I just heard you say. So, with regard to Dartmouth as an example of how other projects would also be considered. So Dartmouth has $500,000 this year. So what I'm hearing you say is that sometimes these funds are encumbered and used, so we might actually have $500,000 of work toward the preparation of go on this project, that they can't deploy 2 million because stormwater doesn't always spend down their money, right? So this, to me, because it's its own enterprise fund, it's not subject to some of the same constraints of the general fund, right? So let's talk more about Dartmouth later, but what I'm hearing you say is some of the time we're deploying funds into a project that can be used straight away in that capital year. We're not always saving up the way that we did for the Walnut Street Bridge, for example.
Yes, I would say that saving up like that for large projects is the exception.
The exception, okay.
I think a better example might be something like our paving allocations that we have done over the years. The $10 million per year that Mayor Kelly has prioritized has been spent on those years, because we know we have a plan for how that's going to be spent. We know the streets that are the biggest priority for that year and can deploy those dollars.
Okay, so the one that has definitely impacted me over the last 4 years of service has been that Walnut Street Bridge, and we've been allocating funds for it. Okay, so that's helpful to understand how that is kind of the exception to the rule. Okay, now, going back, if I may. Sounds like you guys talked ever so briefly about the HR pension software. $3 million is a lot of money. Why is that expensive?
Well,
For HR pension software?
Yeah, I think it is both, let me see if I'm saying what you said correctly, both the initial licensing for that software, as well as ensuring that we are doing data migration from current system, which is not adequate, you called it an Excel file, into the new software to make sure we know that information and data is really important.
Okay, so you all have you've talked about this some already.
We did, yeah, you
Okay,
must have
okay.
stepped away.
All right.
Yeah.
But we're happy to say it again, so.
No,
Okay.
because you and I have talked about it, but I wanted to make sure that we talked about it in public, but we've already done that. Okay, great. Okay, fleet capital, page C2. We are putting $6 million into, we're doing a fleet capital infusion. How much money is in the fleet reserve?
I have to answer that question. Do you happen to know, Justin? You can pull it up. While he's pulling that up, can I speak to the previous question? I think that there's a connection here. One, we have opportunity to improve with respect to how we do capital budgets, which we've talked about with each of you. We're committed to pursuing that, and I think that the point that you are illuminating here ties back to what we're trying to do with the operations budget. So, as we talked about last week, we're constantly trying to figure out ways to deliver the services better, to break down the information silos that inherently exist in any large organization. And a specific example in this budget is that we're moving Eric and Chris out of planning and into finance with the explicit intent to get better at this, right? Because we want to get to a point where all of the capital projects are constantly visible, and we understand what are the blockers, the obstacles, what is the funding, what is the roadmap to completion look like, what each annual allocation is going to do in terms of moving the needle towards completion in a more comprehensive and visual way, so that things like Dartmouth don't fall through the cracks. Because I think that as each year comes, new things come across our desk, new opportunities, and then new unexpected costs. And so we're constantly it's a dynamic tension, right, that we're constantly trying to manage. And I think that by improving the way that we present capital and think about and track capital, we can stay on top of true priorities and make sure that they don't get lost in that shuffle. And so we're committed to doing that. We will do it, and I think that I know that you will see an improvement next year.
I think that's worthy work to do that. Thank you. What do we have on fleet reserve? 14.8 million, thank you. Yeah, Kevin, as you all are thinking through the accessibility of different budget elements, to be able to see at a glance some of these reserves
right.
would be really helpful. Because we have a handful, we have little squirrel nests all over the place. We don't want to forget them.
Yes,
right?
ma'am, that's right.
Okay. Montague Park, C4, $850,000. Does this actually cover construction or only design? It says design and future construction. But how much of it is really future construction?
None of this money is future construction.
Okay. It's
So-
all design?
Yep, and here's the deal, here's what's going on
design?
with Montague. So Montague right now, I think, is an $80 million project. Well,
How much?
80.
80
That
what?
got your attention?
Yeah, right, so a big number.
80 or 80?
80.
And so,
In the Great District 8?
Yes, the great district.
So when next the Great District 8 says they don't have anything, you remind them of their $80 million mark.
$80 million is a big number.
Moving to 7 and 8.
We are,
Run
in
against that.
fiscal year '26, we are value engineering that project to try to get that number down, because 80 million feels out of reach, all things considered. Which I think, judging by your facial expressions, you would agree with that. So, but the overarching vision for Montague is intact. We want to see it happen, but we need the design and the construction documents to be done in a way that, one, they're value engineered, but then two, we can tackle it in phases. And so that is the focus. That is the purpose of this money, is to get us to a place where we can have the underlying documents to be able to pursue it in that way. And this is actually a significant downward adjustment relative to what was needed when we first started the capital budgeting process. And so we are excited about what we can do with this money, and we're excited about getting Montague to a place to where it is more attainable, so that we can start making progress on it sooner.
Okay, thank you. Public safety, C4. I think we just have a error here. We've got a total funding of $718,000. But it looks like we have way more than that.
3 million. 718 of it.
Well,
It's
I think
even more than that, I think.
The one difference between it is that we are, if on the top of page C5, that law enforcement training.
We're pulling it.
Reducing
Okay.
the funds from that, and those funds are going towards the Station 14 replacement.
So the net,
The net.
okay, got it.
is that.
Thank you very much. Okay. Roadway crew equipment, 1.256 million. What equipment are we getting? And let's talk about capacity and capability. I gotta say, I went back through with fine tooth comb the public works budget. I'm excited about the progress that they're making within that department. I'd like to understand this roadway work crew equipment, what it's gonna be able to do for us.
I'll have to look into the specific pieces of equipment, but
Okay.
the additional roadway crew that is a part of Public Works' budget this year, it's
Got it.
being funded through the state
Separate.
street aid. That's, we're using additional state street aid dollars to ensure that they have the equipment
To do
to be
the
able to do the work.
Okay, yeah, if we could get some information on that, Madam Chair, that would be awesome.
Conceptually, though, I do want to throw in that, again, going back to what we're doing with operations, right? We are in-housing core competencies. We're switching on the milling machines and the pavers that we already had. And that is unlocking our ability to be more responsive and to come out and fill potholes and resurface streets quickly versus having to bid them out third party. And so this capital allocation is to supplement the operational allocation so that we can continue the good energy that we, and the momentum that we have in Public Works.
Well, there's mention of adding garbage routes, which I would think would be adding some trucks. We're talking about switching our fleet to a different fuel source, so. Okay, but also those pieces of equipment are very expensive. That could be one piece of equipment based on some of the purchases
could be.
we're asked to approve. Okay, I've already done my big yellow star about Dartmouth 5 points, so we don't even have to do that. Okay, C7, litter master plan. $1 million. Please provide some details on what a litter master plan is. Oh, I bet it's a litter master plan, not a litter master
Not a litter master.
plan. But doesn't litter master sound like they should have like their own TV commercial? Litter master, it's the litter master 2000, you know? Okay.
Might be a recommendation.
Okay, next, repetitive flood loss structure buyouts. The $2 million we're talking about purchasing buyouts for voluntary inclusion of properties that experience repetitive loss due to flooding. And my question is, why? Why are we going to do that? Stormwater asset management plan for $1 million. I think that Maria started alluding to this last week in their presentation, but I'd like some details on the stormwater asset management plan that we're investing $1 million in. And Madam Chair, that's all my questions.
All right.
Thank you very
so
much.
Thank you. And let me see, the last one was the stormwater asset management plan?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you so much. All right, council, any other questions about capital? Councilwoman Byrd?
Yep. I just have a question about, so projects that are already on the books to be done that they have not started yet, those funds aren't included in these amounts, or are they? And the example I'm looking at is the Standard for Gap Road Bridge. Supposedly that money's been set aside, once all the approvals are done, the money is there to do it.
That's correct.
But I
So-
don't see it listed
That's right.
specifically
So,
here.
so unlike operations, the capital budget is, each year, some combination of capital investments are made, and it goes into dedicated accounts for that project.
Okay.
Either a net new project or an existing project, and we're adding funding towards getting that project completed.
Okay.
So Charlotte Bridge is an example of that, where there is an account for that has funding in it. I can't speak to
Is
the level of that funding.
So for that one, cause, last week they did give us the capital projects for each one, so as everybody's looking through the budget, just know there are things in the pipeline for your district already that they did give out.
Is
The
that the
administration-
packet that we got at the
Last
first of the
week,
part?
yes.
Yeah, I need to get that.
Get that,
I
yes.
missed that
And
packet
so-
since
Okay,
I came.
I'll get that.
I
But
meant
for-
to email you over the weekend.
But for yours, for that standard for
Standard for Gap.
Gap Bridge one, it's currently in planning, I guess, planning, design, and bidding
Okay.
process, and the approved budget was 500,000, and the funds that have expended has been 67,000, so the current funds available is like 414, so
Okay.
it does have a separate fund.
I'll
and
just get that
everything.
list, yeah. Okay,
So
thank
again,
you.
connecting it back to what I was sharing with Chairwoman Hill, like this is an example of how we want to even present how the annual capital allocations are contextualized better.
Okay,
And you're not seeing that right now.
Okay.
You're just seeing this year's allocation.
right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, and I think that's a good point, that when we do these budgets, we don't ever look at what is already there. We just kind of look at today, and then it's like, oh, wait, this was already here, we just, cause we focused on getting this, cause we have to get this done, so we focused on this and something.
Well, and I think something you said is making sure things don't slip through the cracks.
Right.
And so while it's great to move on to these great new projects, making sure that those others that have been waiting, you know, are still planned for financially, so, thank you.
Right, any other capital
Madam
questions,
Chair, if I may.
Councilman Clark
No,
and
go
then
ahead.
Councilman Harvey?
I got a question just about basic format, because, you know, a lot of us are new here. When we're doing budget hearings, is it just Q&A, or do we actually discuss with the staff about some of the, like, the fundamental things about what this is and, like, cost benefit analysis? Are you only taking questions, or when do we discuss, because we can't do it,
Well,
you know, in
this is a-
council setting?
Well, this is a budget that we've been working on prior to you all coming here. So like a lot of stuff that you see, individuals like myself and Madam Chair and Councilwoman Nola and Councilman Henderson and all of you all's predecessors have projects that they have been working on prior to you coming. So this budget reflects those things that we've worked on for the past few years and things of that nature. And then coming in, you get a chance to see those projects, and then of course ask the questions that you all have been asking about. Okay, what is that a return on investment? What are those cost benefits analysis? And those are relevant questions because you all weren't here to do that particular part. So moving forward, the plan is to have more realistic budgets to get with you all the same way that we've all worked with administration to get some of these projects already in the budget. So that'll be the plan moving forward is, you know, what are your primary projects and what is it you want to see? What are the things that you would like to see in your district? And so it'll be the same way, you know, in 4 or 5 years, if some of us are not here, that new council will come in and have this same kind of similar experiences, that there's work that's been done or work that's in progress that is reflected in this budget that, you know, you all are getting a fresh look at. So you'll have that opportunity. This is the time to ask questions about this because this is really prior work. This is just work that's, you know, some of the things you've seen are commitments we made 2, 3, 4 years ago. And then you'll have your priority projects that you'll want to see, maybe some that's in here now, and then maybe some you want to see in future budgets, in the capital budget or some other operating things of that nature. But that is something that, just a sneak preview, that I will be asking from all council members around August or September is for you to give me those priority projects so we can review those and begin to work. And you make the administration aware as well, but that we can begin to work on that and seeing how do we, because some projects may take 5 or 6 years, while some may take, you know, and some may take a good month or two. It just depends. So we'll be looking for that coming around August or September. Once we're done with this, looking at how do we make sure that those priority projects from your districts are, and then citywide as well, because there are some projects that we all want to see succeed. You know, how do we begin to work on our budget to ensure that those items are included? So this is, you know, you count on kind of the tail end of work that has been previously done in a sense, I guess. But I really like the idea of the cost benefit analysis and return on investment and things like that, because we've already seen that. Like I love when Councilwoman Burris was asking her questions, because I really wanted to talk a lot about the Riverfront Park plan, because it's really good.
Yeah.
And we've had presentations about it, multiple presentations about it. We actually accepted the plan as a council to do. So it's a really, really, really good project, and I won't get deep in it, but it's really good. Right, it's real good. But those are things that we've already done. So you know, you kind of, in essence, I'm gonna kind of go back to something our chief said early on. You kind of come in at a disadvantage because this project has already been there that you may not be fully aware of, but it is an advantage because then you can come in and get, you know, ask the relevant questions that there are people that may be tuning in that don't know that information, you know. So that's kind of where we are. It's you kind of in between, you know, in between.
And respectfully, I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I know you guys have been working on things months before we got here.
And before we got here.
And before you got here. And respectfully, that's, you know, some of the consequences to elections, to where when we sit at the table, regardless of where we are in the budget process, because a lot of this is amendable, even though some of these projects have expenditures where there's a 3-year or 4-year commitment. And I would expect the city to keep their commitment on those expenditures, and I'm not against that. But what I will say, is that part of this process, this democratic process, regardless of when you come into it, I think it is to represent your people. And we were elected to do that in this budget process this year. And I'm not comfortable going back to my community and saying that because we had an election and we did a personnel change that, I might be at a disadvantage. And so what I would ask, and my original question is that, just for clarity, is that we are asking questions, but, we may be new to council, but we are not new in understanding the needs of our districts, even when my predecessor was in office. And again, elections have consequences. And one of those consequences is being able to sit at the table and bring those new perspectives into this conversation. And that's what we are today. And so, although the philosophies that we may be at a disadvantage, I think we're at an advantage and a mandate, because we are saying we would like your voice to bring in some different perspective in this process, which is why we're legally required to do this hearing. And you've been, you sent an email last night that I did not respond to about some of the things I asked to be considered as amendments. So you've been very open to that. I appreciate that. But I just wanted to, just for educational purposes, I just want to understand how we go about of having these constructive conversations about things that we would like to leverage, meaning maybe cut and maybe reallocate in other areas, as I've mentioned about the riverfront areas and River City that I mentioned last week. I think those are some valid questions that we get from the community, and I would be remiss not to ask those questions on behalf of the people in District 5, in this budget cycle. So I will be responding to that email, and I think some of the questions that I asked last week, some of the answers were provided. Some of that has come back up in regards to the riverfront, and I just got questions about priorities and how equitable it is to other districts. Not to take away from another district, because I think sometimes I hear that because I love the riverfront. I just would like to know how, when we're having these discussions, like what does equity look like in other areas where we might be able to share some of that wealth and fund distribution, and not just in my district, maybe in Councilman Davis's district of Hickson. We've got a lot of recreational stuff out there, but we do have some areas that we could invest in. I don't know what you're smiling at, but I love to see you smile, because at least you're not rushing me right now. But anyway, I just need to understand and ask those silly, stupid questions that maybe other people are thinking. And as the new guy, like I said, not new to this, but maybe new to my council seat. But I'm coming with a mandate out of my district to ask those questions and to bring some bacon back to my district. And I've told that to the chief of staff, and we've been patient. And you got a lot of bacon in District 7, which I would love to come eat with you in District 7. I love District 7. But can we have a constructive conversation on what, some other distribution or redistribution of funds look like in other areas that I might want to champion it outside of the riverfront? So that's all.
All right. Thank you so much, Councilman Clark. Any other comments or questions? All right. Thank y'all so much. I believe that wraps up capital. Is that correct? Okay. All right, wrapped up capital. So moving on to grants and opportunities team.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right, thanks, sir.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank
No.
you, Eric.
Okay.
Hey.
Oh, could we continue to use your computer? Eric?
Thanks, Eric. Hey, how are y'all?
Good, Chelsea, how you doing?
I'm good. For those of y'all I have not met yet, Chelsea Sadler, and I serve as the Director of Grants and Opportunities here at the city. So just wanted to give a quick overview about our office. We are a small but mighty team of 5. We're still fairly new when it comes to city government, although our team members are all prior city employees, but we were started in 2022 when the millions upon millions of dollars were flowing down from the feds. And Mayor Kelly really saw that we needed more support on the back end and the front end of grants, of understanding what's coming down, supporting our departments when it comes to grants management. So, our team, we are here to help increase grant funding for the city of Chattanooga. So we support all of the departments and divisions within the city. Everything from finding grant opportunities to helping with the applications, when we are awarded, helping get the project started. If there are ever audits, monitorings, we also help with that. And those day-to-day questions, how do we hire a grant funded position? Oh no, we used funds we weren't supposed to. We need to check with the federal agency. Can you help us? So we do something different every single day. And really it's just working closely with our departments. We also manage the city's $38.6 million in ARPA funds. And we are very, very, very close, I think after this year, to fully closing out our ARPA dollars. And then we also manage FEMA, COVID-19, and May disaster projects.
All right, any questions for the Grants and Opportunities team? All right.
We all are easy.
Yes, Chelsea,
Will-
well, we love your department. I love your department. Well, you know I do.
I do.
Right, but I love the department.
So at this point, what are your projections for the next year? I mean, I know it's
Ooh,
kind of up in
that's
the
a
air.
great question. Question mark. So we are.
Excuse me, I didn't raise my hand.
I'm sorry,
Madam
I'm
Chair.
looking at you like, that is a good question. But yeah,
Yeah.
Councilwoman Burrs,
Thank
I'm
you, Madam
sorry.
We are keeping up as, with the different information that's coming down and really digging into what's being proposed in the federal budget and how that affects our current grants, especially those ones that we get every single year. So that is something we're staying on top of, working very closely with the mayor's office to talk with our representatives, and really let them know the impact that's going to happen if we lose funding. And then obviously there's grants other than the federal, so falling with the state and then our local foundations and also national foundations. So still question mark about what that means, but we're keeping on top of that and working closely with the departments.
One other question, Madam Chair. Is your department funded as a result of the grant funding that you get, or is it,
It's all general fund.
okay, it's all general funds?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then if a department has a need, then you all can go out and seek
Yes.
some grant funding to
Yes.
help with that need?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we, it's myself, we have a grants accountant, 2 grants coordinators that are divvied up between all the departments, and then a pre-award specialist who really focuses on the application part of the grant cycle. But we know some departments need more support and more help than others, so it really depends on their need. But we do a lot of collaboration and work with them to understand their needs.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you.
I
Any
do
other
have a
questions?
question for Jane.
Councilman
So,
Clark?
If we have some recommendations, do we just send them to you? Like if it's
Yeah.
department specific, do I send it to that administrator or to you?
You can do both.
Oh, so
It's honestly up to you. We have had council people before say, hey, we see needs within departments and there's the opportunities, or within their own districts.
Gotcha.
And to figure out who's the best person, grants@chattanooga.gov hits our entire team. You're welcome to send it to us first, and then we can reach out to the departments and keep you up to date
and
about
then
that.
you will write for. Does the city often serve as like a fiscal agent? Like
We
for
have
instance, if I have
before.
a group, and I was like, hey, I want the city department of XYZ to do that. Would you all serve as a fiscal agent for, like, what's our policy on that? Or
We have before, because we know that there are some times that only the city is eligible to apply for certain grants, but then we can pass their dollars. So we have done that with different partner organizations. So it's just really finding that opportunity and getting the right people to the table to understand what the roles would be and if it makes sense. So that's definitely something.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's on the table.
But council doesn't assign work to grants and opportunities. We go through administration.
Right. Okay. Any other questions or comments for Chelsea? All right, you got off really good.
I know.
Chelsea.
Yeah.
That's 'cause
Thanks,
you're
y'all.
good people. Thank you.
Teach me your ways.
Sorry, Eric.
And then we have operational budget question updates, and then we'll have that general discussion. And y'all, depending on how y'all do, we might skedaddle out of here kind of early.
I'll check my email.
Uh-huh.
So I'm gonna switch over to my computer real quick. Here you go, Eric.
And this-
So-
Is this the email you sent yesterday?
No, I'm not gonna run through that presentation.
Okay, all right.
This is, just,
Let me just say real fast. So, if you haven't checked your email already, Kevin did send out the questions that you all had last week. There was an email that was sent out that answered those questions, and it's in a slideshow
Okay.
form, and it's categorized
Got
by
it.
the department that you asked, and it'll have the page numbers and things like that on it. So, if you haven't reviewed it, please review it. If you have any additional questions, please, reply back to that email.
and I think that we captured everything, but there's always the chance that we might have missed something. So we're happy to provide any additional information that you guys need. There are a lot of linked documents embedded in that PowerPoint that if you click into it, finance and other departments pulled together comprehensive answers. And so, yeah, let us know if you have any issues accessing any of those, et cetera. So I wanted to just quickly run through a couple of slides. Was thinking back on the conversation that we had at the end of last week's budget education session regarding, particularly Councilman Henderson was talking about areas to potentially come back and demonstrate some additional savings. And so we went back, we spent a lot of additional hours together last week looking again at the budget. And so I wanted to just follow up with some thoughts pursuant to that conversation. The first thing I wanted to do is just provide a little bit more context about where we're coming from. Like where, if you look back at the Kelly administration and the budgets that we have put forward, 2022, fiscal year 2022 was the last time that there was a reappraisal cycle, where the administration put forward a proposal and the council adopted unanimously the collective decision to capture some additional property tax revenue by adjusting the millage 17.12% relative to what was then the certified tax rate. The reason that we did that was so that we could raise the minimum per hour compensation for most city employees to $15 an hour, so get that minimum wage up, because it was part of a broader play of wanting to make the city of Chattanooga a desirable place to work. We have continued annually since then to reinvest, which I'll talk about in a second. But we also accomplished in '22 through that budget process 24% pay raises for fire and police. And I wasn't here at the time, but in looking back on some of the footage from the time, there were literally conversations around which fire stations we were gonna brown out because we didn't have enough people. Literal conversations around how long is an acceptable wait time for like 911 response from CPD. And we were canceling recycling routes because we didn't have enough drivers for the trucks, right? And so it was the right call to do that at that time. And because we did it, we've been able to accomplish a lot of really good work in the last 4 years together, the administration and the council. And so moving from 2022, in each subsequent year, the year-over-year growth was just the naturally occurring incremental property tax growth, right? So it was 4.9, 3.7, I'm not gonna read them all. But in each of those years, the Kelly administration proposed and the city council adopted unanimously a plan to continue to reinvest into our civilian workforce, into our employees. And in each one of those years, the majority of the increment was invested back into employees. There wasn't enough increment to do both. And I'm gonna talk about that in a second. When I say both, I mean to do both civilian and sworn. So each year kind of presented this either-or situation. And each year it was decided that the right call was to go civilian side. So the FYI, all of this is to say that we are coming into this contextually, right, with 2.59 and change % naturally occurring growth, which is equivalent to $8.75 million on the operations side. And again, the administration is putting forward this proposal that would invest a majority of those dollars right back into our employees with the 3% increases in funding the step plan, et cetera. And we have been very forthright about the fact that we are not able to address the fire and police on the sworn side, the compensation gap that has emerged in these same years. So to answer the question, like, okay, what would it look like to be truly flat? Well, the easy button here is to think about the 8.75 million and what we are proposing we do with those dollars. And if we wanted to do a truly flat budget, we could decide that we won't do the 3% raises for sworn, that we won't fund the positions.
For non-sworn.
I'm sorry, thank you, for non-sworn, thank you. So we wouldn't do the raises for non-sworn. We wouldn't continue to fund the good work that we're doing over at Public Works, which again, I think that everybody would agree here that is to the net benefit of our entire city, right? They're just super responsive and good stuff is happening over there. We would back off of the DTS reorg. We would not pursue that. And then we would not fund 5 new positions at CPD. So we would not be able to enhance victim services. We would not be able to enhance the crisis co-response unit. We would not be able to have additional crime investigators. And we just wouldn't do it. And Bob's your uncle. We'd be flat. But as we were looking at this budget more closely, I realized that we're doing a lot more. We're not just doing that 8.75 million. We're also able, within the context of a flat and a balanced budget, we're doing all of this other great stuff where we're going to come in and we're going to provide some additional staff capacity with the city attorney's office. We're going to fund a new position at the FJC. We're going to be able, through the economic development department, continue to do eviction prevention, and we're going to be able to pursue our portion of the partnership with Hamilton County Schools around addressing school homelessness. We're going to keep building the apprenticeship program at Chat State. We're going to do downtown recruitment. We're going to fund the $2 million plus up on the operations side for CARTA and support that agency as they are trying to kind of reinvent themselves and make sure that they're providing a level of service that the city deserves. We're going to be able to additionally do the $1.5 million of non-RFP agency funding, and we were able to plus up R&R and plus up contingency to $4.8 million, and then do the risk play that we talked about last week. So when I'm thinking about where are the efficiencies, the additional opportunities for maybe savings, well, here are our savings, and this is what the administration is proposing we do. So the reason that we're able to fund contingency at a higher level is because we have gone department by department with a fine-tooth comb, and we have instituted kind of some new standards of how we're going to do our budgets. We're not going to allow them to carry vacant positions year over year, et cetera, et cetera. And all these incremental dollars are able to go to fund these things that the administration feels, and we believe that you guys would agree are important things to fund, while getting closer to a benchmark on the contingency side. Now, I will note that the city has historically run pretty low contingencies. We have had a lot of conversations around budget policies and best practices, and we're looking as a team here, we're looking to collectively have budgets and financial policies that reflect those best practices. Well, a $4.8 million contingency, while a significant improvement over historical years, is actually still pretty far off the mark when it comes to what GFOA would call best practice, because against a $345 million budget, a well-funded 5% contingency is like $17 million. So it's not, we're not spiking the football here, but we are moving in the right direction. And so the easy button, sure, we could say, you know what, we want to demonstrate some savings, and maybe we're not going to do some combination of these things, and then we'll cut contingency down. But then should a contingent situation occur in the upcoming fiscal, we're going to come to you guys and we're going to ask to dip into reserves to pay for it. And we're going to know that the money is there because we took it out of contingency and put it there. So it feels like a little bit like, robbing Peter to pay Paul. So, okay, bigger picture. So why can't we fund fire and police raises now? 2. Well, going back to the organic growth either or annual decision that we've been making, because we've just had this organic growth, we didn't have enough to do 3% and 3% because we didn't have 6% growth. We chose to try to keep pace on the civilian side. Well, in the meantime, there's created this gap with fire and police to the tune of 30%, 20% respectively, which, you know, that is equivalent to about let's call it $18.5 million of recurring general fund revenue that we would need to be able to identify and find in this budget to go ahead and true up police and fire on the sworn side. And so, okay, what would it, conceptually, what might it look like if we decided that we wanted to do that? Well, we would not do any of the stuff that we've talked about. We would back off of what we feel like are the right moves, the smart moves. We feel like the timing is right on these budget initiatives that are included in this proposal. So all the stuff on the left-hand side, and then some combination of the stuff on the right-hand side. So basically, in order to accomplish it, we would have to throw an absolute wrench into the progress that we're making along all of these various fronts. And that's not the proposal that Mayor Kelly is putting before you guys. That's not the direction that we think is in the best interest. We believe that we can walk and chew gum at the same time, meaning we believe that we can pass this budget now, and then together with you guys, work on solving the bigger problem subsequently. So just to summarize real quick on this budget, on the operation side, we have to present a balanced budget. That is, you know, state law requires us to do that, right? So this budget is balanced. It is transparent and it reflects reality. We've talked a lot with each of you about how we want our budgets to be an accurate depiction of what is going on in the departments. We believe that this budget is. We believe that it funds progress towards shared goals and it continues to move the ball forward on some of these realignments and optimization plays. We believe that we're taking good advantage of technologies that are available to us and that we are continuing to expand our in-house competencies. And so we believe that this budget is the right budget for now. And we would like to see you guys pass this budget now so that we can build on the foundation together as we try to go tackle the next problem without an arbitrary deadline later on this fall to get the budget complete, because we have to have a completed budget submitted to the state comptroller by the end of August. So I just wanted to further contextualize where we are on the operations side with those slides, and I hope that was helpful.
All right. Was that the last one?
That was the last one. Yeah.
Okay. All right, council, given that updated presentation from our chief of staff, do you have any questions? Okay, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Kevin, I appreciate the way that you thought through that and identified the fact that, you know, by making smart decisions year over year, that we're seeing efficiency and we're doing more with the budget we have. $18.5 to $19.5 million is a lot of money.
It is.
And when you originally shared that number with me, and I thought just about our police budget at $89 million, we're approaching a $100 million police budget. It's a massive number, an annual number. And it kind of made me gasp. I will only speak for myself and say that I'm grateful for the work that our fire and police do for us on a daily basis. And I respect the fact that we need to pay them fairly for the work that they do. I question with the level of thoughtfulness that you all have approached each of the smaller departments. Have we really looked deep into the two biggest line items in our budget, being our fire budget and our police budget? With no disrespect to the people who work in those departments, but acknowledging the reality that all of us always have an opportunity to do better with the finances that we have, right? And we've seen that this city has done that with, across other departments. So, as a representative of District 2, I would like to better understand those budgets. You know, we fly across those. It's like, okay, 89 million bucks, great. Well, why? And is there a way with an additional cash infusion for our salaries and the pension fund, which is an enormous liability for the city? Like, we can't gloss over those and call ourselves fiscally responsible for them, right? Like, we have to really do the due diligence on those to understand. Because if we're gonna approach as a city of 200,000 souls, a $100 million police budget, y'all, what's that per person? It's a lot, and I don't know about y'all, but I've got people speeding in my district. I got people running red lights in my district. I got people doing wheelies down Hickson Pike on motorcycles at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Sunday. So to raise $20 million to add to those essential services, you want to talk about being able to really share that with my district, we got to really understand it. Another thing, you mentioned arbitrary deadline. You know, when you all came to us with this split budget concept, you said that the comptroller frowned completely on the idea of a continuing resolution. I've been hearing from people within the city at large, not just my district, but elsewhere, but also within my district about, you know, this 1-2 punch doesn't feel as transparent as we'd like it to feel. You know, we're gonna have a budget hearing this afternoon, and people are gonna, like, public at large is hearing we have a flat budget, and we need to look at fire and police. But finding $20 million is no small thing, and obviously we'll have an amendment hearing as well. But I think it would be worthwhile for this council to look at the potential of a continuing resolution. I reached out to Senator Watson. He connected me with the comptroller. We have complete clarity that we have the opportunity as a council to, we have the authority as a city council to pass a budget and get it to them by August 31st. Now, historically, we've gotten the adjusted certified tax rate round about the end of June. So if we were looking at how might fire and police find money within their budgets to meet us in the middle, say, you know, we look for 10, they look for 10 to get to that 20. We might be able to make some significant progress toward that by our certified tax rate June 30th, have the entire month of July to be able to get a fresh budget on the agenda for the first meeting in August, because we would need to get a first reading and a second reading done to be able to get it to the comptroller. It's important to note that not having a budget approved by the comptroller limits our ability. We will not be able to go into the bond market. So it's important to know, like, we can't issue debt if we don't have an approved balanced budget. So the 31st is an important deadline of August. So just want to put that out there. I know that Councilman Henderson brought up, you know, stepping in that direction, and at his request, I've been doing some research on that on behalf of the council. So just putting it out there for my colleagues to consider.
Okay, and as just a second, just as we talk about a continuing resolution, I think it would do an injustice to our constituency. We haven't received the adjusted certified tax rate. We have not, and we have gave public notice of these things. So had this kind of happened, and I think you discussed it a little while back, had this happened prior to us public noticing and all those things, that would be something absolutely to consider. But as your budget chair, I would recommend that we move forward with what we've already told the public we're going to do. We don't want to get caught up in a situation where the waters get muddied and we're like, well, we know we put a public notice out and we did the legal thing, but wait, we're gonna do something else, give us a minute, and we'll come back by the end of August. So we don't wanna get caught up in the fact that we don't have the adjusted certified tax rate yet. We don't want to be caught up in a situation where we've given people a schedule and said, hey, last week we did the budget education session 1, we did education session 2, everybody's asked questions, they're getting their answers back. Everybody's not gonna be pleased with the answers, everybody's not gonna be 100% satisfied with anything that happens, because we're human, we all human, and we have our own perceptions on what we think is right. But at the end of the day, and I'll lean into Councilman Clark, we were all elected for a reason, and we were all elected to represent our constituents. And this is one of the things that we do as a council, is make sure that the budget is approved and that we're in alignment with state law. So though we have the opportunity to go to August 31st, we don't want to begin to muddy the budget in a way where, because then we're going to have to come back and have these same conversations, have all this again, when we can really look at, okay, this is what we have now, this is what we're working on, and then there's no time. If we decided, I'm just hypothetically, if we decided to amend the budget, we wouldn't have a timeline on that amendment. That gives us time to really delve into the police budget. It gives us time to delve into the other items that we see as priority without convoluting the process. So that would be my recommendation to the council, although a continuing resolution would have been ideal if we had not already put the public if we had not already noticed the people. If we didn't say, hey, we're gonna have this, you know, this date, we tentatively plan to vote June 3rd and June the 10th. If we didn't tell the public that, and it wasn't in the paper, and it wasn't those things already there, I would absolutely go for a continuing, because when we came in, we had a continuing resolution.
Yeah.
So that is, you know, but there was no notice of anything though. Everybody was, you know, it was like, okay, we're just gonna continue it until we're ready. In this case, because we've already made people aware, made the media aware, and other things we were supposed to do according to state law, then I would recommend that we move forward with the budget that we have, noting all of the conversations we've had. Then upon that amendment, looking at the things we've just discussed, because it would just, in my opinion, it would muddy the water and cause a little bit of confusion amongst people, because then it becomes, well, I thought y'all were coming, because some people would just look at what we thought we did at first and say they'll come in on today and we have public hearing today, and they will come in today and do that, and then in maybe August-ish, we say we having another public hearing. Well, okay, I thought we talked about that already. Like, well, it's a little different. So I'm just, and I appreciate the work Madam Chair did, because a lot of people wouldn't have went above and beyond to do that, to contact Senator Watson and to make sure that we had all the information, as opposed to us just kind of guessing, right, have all the information, because sometimes we, as you well know, we do not have all the information. But we have, so now we are aware that we could do a continuing budget and try to get all that passed by August 31st, or we could look at passing this current balanced budget that has been worked on, and then looking at that amendment, and it gives us more time to really delve into all these questions and all these things. My goal as your budget chair is to make sure we're compliant, to make sure that our budget passes, that we can issue bonds and we can issue debt, and we can move forward with what we can with the quality services that we're already providing, and then come back and say, because I love fire and police and they know that, want to come back and look at that again and say, okay, what is something in District 4 that we can look at, or District 3 or District 5, you know, and in District 5 that we can. I was just looking at
You're
coding.
talking about like opening up the whole budget.
Well,
all
not
over
necessarily
again?
opening it up, but looking at look at your core things. Look at those things, you know, because the supplement will have some things in it. So just looking at, so look at,
Listen, $20 million
no,
is
listen,
no small amount of money.
It is not. It's a whole lot of money. So we have to look at those. So just so be mindful as you're kind of considering if there's something the council wants to do, if you want to do a continuing resolution where we kind of carry this on further, or if we want to go ahead and get this done and then say, okay, let's come back and look at that supplement. And knowing that also around August-ish, I'll be asking you all for your priority projects as well to see how we can do that. Councilman Clark, you got a
Was
question?
there someone in front of me? I thought someone else had a question.
I don't think so. Oh, so, okay, Councilman Clark and then Councilman Harvey, right?
Okay.
And Elliot. Okay, hold on. I ain't got no notes. Okay, go ahead, Councilman Clark.
Thank you, Councilman Donnelly. I want to pick it, so this is, half of us are new to council.
That's right, I'm sorry.
And it's okay, but we're not, again, we can read and study, so I know when we talked about a continuing resolution, is that to ask the state legislature to allow us to go past August 31st?
To go past, because the budget is, in essence, is due
Oh, June
June
30th.
thirtieth. Yes,
Okay.
it's due, so the continuing resolution will allow us to go to August 30th. We have to
Okay,
have it
okay,
by
that was my
August
question.
31st.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, oh.
And,
So we'd have the new tax rate.
gotcha.
Mm.
When will we have the new tax rate?
We don't know.
We don't know, okay.
And that's
I
why-
thought, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you clearly, so.
Yes, by the end
By
of
the end
June.
of
2020,
Okay.
it was, Marty Haynes released it July 30th. In 2021, I'm sorry.
So we don't, so
Okay.
hopefully end of June, maybe July, and that's what the issue with this, it's like,
Gotcha. Thank you.
July, I'm sorry, I misspoke, yeah, July,
Oh.
the end of July, so we still have a month, yeah.
so
We
it just,
wouldn't- we
No,
wouldn't
no,
have
no,
it.
no, no, end of June,
That's
never
okay.
mind, always one number off.
either way, it'll be so while we're waiting on that, which we don't know what it is, then it, we don't wanna belabor this because we're waiting on that. Had we had it, that'd be a whole different,
So what I'm hearing from Chairwoman Hill is that we would need more time to, I guess, maybe dig a little deeper into fire and police and see if there's some additional cuts or whatever.
Do this as one package.
Do this as one package. Are we only bound to having budget hearings, I guess, once, like, could you schedule,
it's a committee, so yes, we can
so
schedule it.
if we wanted to avoid a continuing resolution, to allow more time to discuss and to do some more budget analysis into fire and police, would you be open to scheduling more of these between now? Like, for instance, I don't mind coming in here twice a week to get this done. Councilman Clark does not mind doing my job.
We are doing our job.
Everybody's doing their job, but I'm saying, it seems like sometimes we like to rush things. And not accusing anybody, but it's like, let's rush to lunch, let's rush out of here, right?
Go ahead, go, continue.
I get frustrated, but I'm learning, but we asked the city to do culture changes in their departments. I look at Manny behind you and Kevin, we're like, change the culture so we can be more efficient and deliver results. I think council can do the same thing. I agree with what you're saying. Get this done, put a bow on it, get the budget done. But she has a great point that I'm also interested in. Would you be open to adding more? Because I think just as well as you can send a notice, you could send another notice and say we're doing something else. Is that something you would be open to so that we could, I can't speak for the other council members, but I'd be willing to put in a couple extra more days as a new council person. But, people in our districts are asking about these acronyms, about, the stuff just as well as I am, because there is a concern about the level of transparency, not necessarily because we're not being transparent, it's because we just don't know what we don't know. And we just need more time, and I need more time. But would you be open to adding some additional budget hearings, like, we meet on Tuesdays, right now we're doing once a week, would you add like another one on Wednesday or Thursday, like at night, or, I don't know, but what is your attitude or openness on adding that to avoid going past Rakita, Councilwoman Dobbs?
Oh, I thought, did you finish
Oh, that
the
was to
sentence?
you.
Oh,
Yeah, that
I'm
was
like,
you.
what?
You're
Oh.
like staring at him, I'm like, yeah.
I am, because I'm contemplating what I'm going to say. But I'm open to whatever the council needs. Personally, I think, as your budget chair, I want to make sure that every council member has all the information that they need to make a sound choice and a sound decision for their constituents. And that is ultimately my goal. My goal also is to make sure that we are in compliance with the state. Although we have the option to do a continuing resolution, I don't think it's in the best interest of our city to do that, because at the end of the day, we need to have something passed, and we need to not, in my opinion, to focus on, because then you come back and redoing the whole thing. When there are some things that's just there that you're gonna have a human resource department.
Sure.
You're gonna
That's
have,
right.
so there are certain things that we know, but there are hot areas that we need to review further, like the police and fire.
Absolutely.
So I would say, as as much as the council was interested in a additional budget session, I mean, I'm here
I mean,
to
could some
discuss
other
it,
council people
but
speak
I
up?
think
Is that
that-
something y'all are
but I
thinking
think,
about or interested
but
in?
also I think that we need the information on what that is, cause sometimes I don't wanna schedule something, then we come and all sit here for 30 minutes. But the question is, what particularly do you want information on, and what particularly can we get the information on? So that would be my first, before scheduling anything, I would recommend either sending to me or Kevin, or copy me, Kevin and Nicole and Kim on, you know, what is it particularly you want information on, and what particularly can we get information on, to be able to share, with each other, cause it may be something easily resolved that, you know, we don't necessarily have to have a session for, or it may be something very in depth, like, looking at our public safety budgets. So, that
May I
is,
jump in?
yes.
So, thank you, Chair.
Oh, wait, hold on,
Chairwoman.
I'm so sorry.
And I
So
wasn't
sorry.
finished.
Let me make sure we finish.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was not finished. And
Oh,
Kevin, I would
sorry.
like that last slide that you showed with those, it wasn't in that deck that you sent us. Is that,
No, I'm happy to share that.
okay, if you could send that,
separate.
I'd love to look at that a little.
Sure.
But Councilwoman Dowling, I agree with you, and I respect that. I think for me, as I'm contemplating all of the discussion and reading through and looking at Kevin's analysis of what happens if we do that haircut is, Councilman Henderson talked about, I'm praying and I'm thinking about how this document is a moral document, and I would like more. We are asking a lot of questions, but I just feel like I would like to have more dialogue amongst my council members about. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm articulating. I would like more dialogue about what our budget, what is our budget to our city? Now, we're asking questions, which are great, and I know certain things that we can't, amend because it's our departments, but I would just like to start having fundamental philosophical questions about budgeting. And,
I think budget.
and I just don't know how to do that if it's this,
Budget education is more, I wouldn't say it's philosophical. I don't think we wanna come here and have a whole philosophical conversation. Your budget does reflect your priorities at the end of the day, and what does our budget say? Our budget prioritizes people.
right.
Including our people as well as Chattanoogans, and I think that at the end of the day is what our budget is saying. It's just, not if we do that, but it's the how that we do. So I think and what I ask is that send me the discussion that you
Gotcha.
want to have. Send me the specific topic, or send me that thing, or whatever it is, whatever the thing is, and send it to me, so we can take a hard look at it and have a maybe informal discussion with administration about what that is. Because at this moment, we've gone through the budget. People have asked their questions as much as they can. We have additional questions that we need to answer today. And so I'm not sure if another budget session is necessary, depending
May not be.
on it just depends on what we're gonna be discussing, cause it's not really, we can talk about ethics and morals and philosophy and all those things, but the reality is this: does our budget reflect our priorities as a city, as individuals, as our council people? Does it reflect the city? And then is any further discussion gonna change that?
The outcome.
Yeah. So
And
that's
I
what
guess that's what I'm saying. I would like, because when I think about her, Councilwoman Hill's comments about the $20 million, the money that we need, right, for fire and police. But then I think about, we just spent $35 million to repair a bridge. And so where can I have that? Is this the place in the budget hearings to flush that out and say, we're talking about priorities. I'm like, well, if I'm not asking you a question, can I flush that? How do we dialogue about those priorities and say, well, $20 million for fire and police, but $35 million for a bridge? Where does that discussion live in this process?
That's why it depends on what it is. For
Gotcha.
instance, $35 million for a bridge, that's something you can get with Public Works and discuss
Sure.
what is that project, whereas this fire and police is a part of our larger budget. Okay, well, let's talk about what that looks like.
Gotcha.
And what that is. So that's why the content is gonna be important. So if you could get that to me,
Gotcha.
then we can do that, because we don't have council, next Tuesday, because of Memorial Day. So, thank you, Madam Chair, so much for that. So just flush out what that content is, and then we can navigate that based on what the content is, because now it's getting in the weeds, and
Sure.
which it should, because we supposed to get in the weeds. So that's what I asked of you, Councilman Clark. Get the content of those things that you want to, what is it? And then we can flush that out and then see if we need to bring any of that here, or is that just a matter of education on the various projects or
Because it could
departments?
influence how I vote on the budget.
Right, understood.
I think, and I think that's the bottom line. Like, we're all looking at this budget and knowing what the essentials are, what we have to do. But ultimately, I think, I'm not speaking for several of us, but I can't, feel comfortable with voting on a balanced budget right now.
That's fine, and that's your
And
right
so,
for your constituents.
I guess my question would be, and I think you answered it, we'll send it, we'll flush it out. I want to talk more, so I can understand.
More?
That's right, more.
I'm playing.
As you have the right to do, Councilman Clark, is to talk.
I'm about to take
But,
a
talk about,
And
you
then,
know,
when y'all
remember,
get on the
remember,
news, because let me tell you something,
remember, stay
when
focused,
I fight District 5, because
stay focused,
seriously,
stay focused.
because we're getting emails and I was at an NAACP meeting yesterday, and they're hammering us about this type of stuff. So I'm asking questions, so I can be. This is a thing where we have to go and explain to people. Now, I support all of this. I'm not against. I thank you for your slide. I get that 3%. I get it. We have to talk about it, but it is my fiduciary duty as a council person to understand it and vote comfortably, and then go and tell my people why I did it. So these questions, these sessions are important. So that's why I'm asking, where can I do it? How long can I do it? And if you don't, and nobody wants to do it, that's fine. But I'm going to do it and come back and ask a question either here or at the dais.
And that's what I'm telling you. You have to have the content for what you're asking for, because just saying, I'm gonna ask questions because I wanna ask, because I wanna talk, is not the method in which we have an efficient and effective council. The question is, what is the content of what you're saying? What particularly are you asking about? You had a few specific
And I
questions
can put
today.
that
And that's all we need, and that's all we need. Once you put that into a document, get it, and you and I can look at it and we can talk about it. And then if we need to bring that out to another session, we can. Or just maybe just general information that you need. It just depends on what it is. So we don't want to have sessions just so we can come here and say, well, Madam Chair, what you think about this? Or I saw this, and no, we need to, because we all have things that we have to do. We all have other things outside of here that we have to do. We all have other responsibilities, including yourself.
Including myself.
Yeah, so we recognize that we have to use every bit of time that we use for city council effectively and efficiently. And so in order to do that, we need to know the content of the meetings. We just don't want to have it just to have it, but what is the content of what is the content of the questions? What is what are we looking at, so that we can all, because it maybe have information
I've been
from
on the
everybody.
record in this meeting today and last week about those things. I will put it in writing,
Right.
which is perfectly fine. But my question was, I was just trying to get the understanding of the format of how we deliberate, how we discuss, and how we ask questions in this hearing. Because I don't know. When I think of hearing, it's just not limited to just questions. We usually, by law, we could deliberate amongst each other to the public to understand like how we feel about what this living document is and how it reflects our values as a city. That's it.
Okay.
But I'm not an actuary scientist, and so I know some of y'all are going line by line and asking those questions, but my questions are philosophical as to like what our priorities are. And when I'm hearing we are looking for these deficits and these other stuff, but I'm looking at other numbers, I'm just like, really? And then I've been clear to the chief of staff, and I've been clear in this meeting about what my priorities are for my district. I'd be more than happy to put it in writing, and so that way it could be understood, because then if it doesn't show up in the budget, I can be able to explain what happened through the process. But I figured I would just at least ask the question first, and to understand that 9 of us represent 9 distinct districts, and that some of the things that are in this budget benefits us all. But I'm going to ask the question so I can get clarity, so I could be on the same page with everybody else. Because I'm new.
All right, so look forward to hearing your questions, and I will circle back to our chief, and then I will get Councilman Harvey and Councilman Elliott, and then Madam Chair Hill, I can get to you, please. Okay.
So Chairwoman Hill, first of all, thank you for bringing that to the table. A couple of things that I think it's important for everybody to understand. So the 8/31 deadline is not new information. That's what we were told by the comptroller as well. And going back to last year, we were having internal conversations with Mayor Kelly about, do we do a CR or do we do a budget and then try to amend it subsequent? And initially, he wanted to do a CR too. He thought that's what we did last time, let's do it again. But as we explored further with the comptroller, I guess the one piece of new information relative to the last time we did this was that if we are not successful in getting everything finished by 8/31, then it could jeopardize our ability to go to the bond market, as you also said. So I just want everybody to know that we, the administration has had these conversations, and then we were able to convince Mayor Kelly that that's the most prudent option to go ahead and pass a budget. So, and we still believe that. And so I want to talk a little bit about why that is. The outcome of any process is going to be limited by the scarcest resource, okay? And in this case, it's money. But if we do a CR, it's money and time. And so if you talk about, bringing fire and police to the table. If I believed, just inherently, that the police department had $10 million laying around, then everything that I have said to you guys about this budget is not true. Because I don't believe that it's that simple. I think that when we get into it, it is going to be very difficult to identify the kind of savings that we all agree we need to identify, so that the proposal that we ultimately bring to taxpayers in Chattanooga is a demonstration of skin in the game, right? I think that because it isn't just fire and police that we're gonna have to look at. We've talked a little bit last week about, and again this week we alluded to potential, where could we potentially reorganize the other departments to identify some efficiencies. I think that there is potentially an opportunity to look at the agency spending. I think that that's an area of interest that everybody has expressed, right? And so when we get into any one of those particular verticals, I see it getting difficult pretty quickly, because the administration is going to bring forward an idea based on our conversations that then is going to be subject to all of your respective opinions, who will then be seeing it for the first time, and there needs to be some good deliberation and back and forth, and I believe that that's going to take time across each of the verticals that we're going to have to massage. So that's fire and police, that's agency spending, that's structural reform. I'm also hearing in conversations with folks that one of the guiding principles is, to the best of our ability, to not RIF people, right? To not do a net reduction of the workforce. Well, I think that if the administration inherently believed that we can find $10 million, well then the budget that I'm presenting you isn't real, and it is real, and it is transparent. And I think that, normally we would be spiking the football about no tax increase in this budget. We have not said that one time. My first remark from the podium was, this budget does a lot of good stuff, but I want everybody to have eyes wide open about what it does not do. And what it doesn't do is address this gap that we have with our sworn fire and police officers. And I believe that we all have a shared desired outcome of how we get there. We all want to close the gap, and we all want to do it in a way that minimally impacts taxpayers, right? And I know that is going to be difficult. I know it's going to be difficult. And if we impose upon ourselves a deadline that forces us to do something because we have to, I don't think that it's a recipe for true success. Because if we remove that deadline by doing a budget that we can all be proud of, which I think we can all be proud of this budget because it's good. It stands on its own. It's a good budget. We can come back and take time. And as we get into the slog of what this process is gonna look like, we are not pressed to get it done by August 31st. We can come back. We can go back to the drawing board on things. And I just think that, again, outcome of any process limited by the scarcest resource. If we can get that down to just one resource, money, we can get to a better place because we don't have to work against the clock.
Compelling argument.
All right, thank you so much, Chief. Councilman Harvey, followed by Councilman Elliott and Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Chief, thank you, and Madam Chair, thank you for this work on the budget. I mean, this is my first time doing this, and this is a difficult thing. I mean, it's something that, frankly, I think, I've felt as a burden, because, we're looking at making a very important decision in tough times, on the taxpayers. So that was my number one concern with, like I said, feeling burdened by that is, on one hand, you don't want to put this on the backs of the taxpayers, but on the other hand, we do want fire and police to have what they deserve after we saw what they go through at fire ops the other day. I mean, they have a tough job, and they deserve to be paid as much as we can give them. But I do want to reiterate what Councilman Henderson said last week and what Chairwoman Hill said today, to take a hard, deep look at the entire budget. I mean, fire and police line items as well, absolutely. And I do want to commend you by you've already started that process. It looks like. But I've got my constituents coming to me saying, "Well, Hamilton County found $3 million of waste last week. If you saw that in the paper recently, Hamilton County was able to, give some raises. It looks like they did a different comp system. I think they give like a 1% raise to their employees, but with a bonus structure. So I think my challenge to you all is I'd like to see some proposals that are different like that, that may be less of a burden to the taxpayers. Like Councilman Henderson said last week, I want to do everything we can not to put this on taxpayers and have to increase what they pay when they're already paying $10 for a dozen eggs, and like everything else is extremely expensive still during this inflationary period. So that's it. I think unfortunately in this time of our country, everything is increasingly more partisan. But in my opinion, finding and eliminating government waste is not a partisan issue. It's a common sense issue. It's not a President Trump issue. It's not a President Obama issue, who, by the way, also looked at eliminating government waste. So did President Clinton. I mean, it's not a partisan issue. I don't know how that came that way, but anyway, that's my challenge to you all is let's do everything we can to take the hardest, deepest look. And I don't know if that's a task force. I don't know if that's with the internal audit department within the city to do that and take another hard look and see if there's anything that we can. I'm doing that in my personal life, and I found subscriptions I've had that I haven't used in the last 5 years. So it's like, well, let's cut that, and that helps my budget. So that's just my challenge to you all.
Yeah.
But thank you for everything you've done.
Yes, sir. Thank you for that. And the administration shares that desire. We want to figure out how to solve this difficult problem. The easy button is just to put it all on the taxpayers. We're not doing that.
Sure.
We don't. The mayor doesn't want to do that. The administration has, and I will reiterate our commitment to rolling up our sleeves and doing the work to figure out how to get there in a way that minimizes ultimate impact and ask of taxpayers. I just know that is something that's going to take more than the few weeks that we would have if we go the route of a CR. And I do think that what that would look like, counterfactual simulations are helpful. So like, let's say we decide, let's do the CR. Well, I think in order to be able to, in a satisfying way for all of you, go through all of the variables that we would have to go through and go back and forth on various proposals and reorgs and all of the things, I think that it is multiple sessions a week. I mean, this becomes the shared project that is all consuming. It trumps everything else until we get it done. And I just think that that's a difficult ask on you. I think it's a difficult ask on us. I think that it is, I just don't think it's prudent. I think that the most prudent thing is to pass this budget because it's good, it's balanced, and then let's get to work and figure out the best way to amend it. Because we can still look at the whole budget, you know what I mean? But we have it, right? It's bird in the hand.
Is that it, Councilman Harvey?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Elliott, followed by Madam Chair Hill.
I want to first start off by saying I hadn't talked that much.
Oh, sorry. I'm playing.
I wish some of y'all would talk more, actually.
I'm playing.
Whatever.
Coming into this budget cycle, my number one priority was making sure that District 9 was represented. And, you know, I think we're still working on that and closing the gap on that. But largely, we also have a responsibility to the city as a whole as council members. And, you know, I hear what you all are saying, and I understand you're driving operational excellence, and you're really trying to make sure the city is more efficient, and I see that. I really do. I've gone through several budgets on the other side of this at this point, and I understand how difficult it can be, and I understand the things you guys are trying to achieve. But I will say, there's always room to save. I think we have seen ourselves grow, and I know more things cost more, right? You know, when you're putting out contracts, they cost more. Insurance gets more expensive. Like, we're in an economy where we're having to compete with all these other different markets just to keep employees. Things are more and more expensive. But I think it would truly behoove us if we said, okay, there's no savings. I think I've heard, many of you guys have heard me say, I really want to look at a lot of these agencies we give funding to, right? Are they actually completely benefiting the people? Or are we throwing good money after bad, right? We haven't popped the hood on that in a very long time. Until popping the hood, and I think it goes to what a lot of my colleagues are saying, Councilman Clark, Councilman Harvey, Chairwoman Hill, we get a new budget every year, but we never see how we do once we pass it, right? It's not a whole lot of check-ins. And I feel like I'm hearing a lot of that from my colleagues. And, you know, I've talked about this with Chairwoman Hill early on, of like, how can we rethink what does that accountability look like, but also better educate us as to what is working, what is not, right? We have committees that for a while hadn't been utilized very well. We have some committees that had met in a couple years, right? But each one of our committees, most of them cover every single department, most of them in the city, right? There's no reason we couldn't use our committee to say we have a quarterly or bi-quarterly budget meeting for your respective departments.
Yeah.
Like, we chair each of our own committees. And I think it's our responsibility as the oversight piece of that, of course within our wheelhouse, to say, how are we doing budget-wise? Why is there a surplus of money that we may have allocated that hasn't been used, right? That may be an opportunity for savings going into the next budget, that we catch it throughout the process. So we're not just sitting here saying woulda, coulda, shouldas at the final hour where we're getting ready to have to figure out, are we gonna pass it? It's talks of now CR. I think there's an opportunity to make our body work more efficiently, to accomplish many of the goals we're talking about without it being overbearing, right? Like, I'm already prepared to schedule my committee, have several meetings, so y'all just buckle up. Y'all may get tired of economic development, but it's part of our jobs, right? And I hope that we all kind of look inward as we're thinking about that. It's like, what can we do in our scope to make sure that we can close the gap on this particular issue, right? 'Cause I think we can solve this a lot easier, especially going forward. This budget here it's not the end of the world, right? I think there's definitely room for savings. I really do, but I'm also looking forward to the future. And I know Chairwoman Hill, you made a point about popping the hood on fire and police, which I think we should pop the hood on everything. But I will say this. We are drastically falling behind like markets when it comes to paying our first responders. Highway Patrol is starting off at 70. The Sheriff's Office is 58. This is police. Collegedale starts off at 55. I think we're like 46, 47. So when we're talking about recruiting and retaining the best, we're not getting it. My district sits in some of the most highest violent crime areas in this city. And oftentimes we know police isn't always a deterrent. Oftentimes they are incredibly responsive. But I don't even have patrols regularly rolling around in my cities because we don't have enough cops on the street. I have elderly folks who are calling for ambulances who are having to wait for a fire truck or a first responder to show up because there's traffic, because the next closest unit may be 15 minutes down the street, but they can't get to it because we don't have enough units on the street to begin with, right? I understand when we look at their budgets, we're probably look at it like, okay, it's a lot for fire. Those trucks cost, they like 8 to 10 million, sometimes more. We have to get ours custom built because a lot of the hills we have as it stands. And so I know everybody's gonna make their own decision about that and what that looks like, and I 100% stand behind us popping the hood. I think we make more of an intentional effort to do this throughout the year, not just in this small window. So I'm not gonna lie, I feel like as a new council person, I feel like it's a little clunky. Chairwoman, you have done a great job, but as a new councilwoman, it's kind of clunky. We're rushing it. We didn't have the same runway as our colleagues who are returning. But when it comes to this fire and police pay, I think we have to stand behind our people, because if something happens, those are the first folks we're calling. And I will even challenge us to look at how can we not just plug this hole, because we were just here 4 years ago. I really would not like to be in this conversation 4 years from now where we're saying, okay, we just did barely enough. How can we catch up and properly maintain for these next 4, 8, 15 years so we're not having to come back and put all of this burden back on the taxpayers? Let's do it right the first time so we're not having to play catch up and kicking the can down the road. So that's my 2 cents for today.
Thank you. Well said, Councilman Elliott. Loving this is not the end all be all. We have other budgets to consider as well, so I appreciate that very much. And I like the idea of the looking at those budget activities with the committees throughout the year. So those are really good. And then we will go to Madam Chair Hill.
Thank you. Yeah, Councilman Elliott, you brought up some great points. Thank you very much. And think as a council person, there's always a tension between being responsive / reactive to immediate needs and being proactive about the long-term goals. And what you're speaking about is that proactiveness, and I applaud that. Thank you. Two thoughts I want to add. First, Councilman Clark, the budget hearing that we're going to have this afternoon is structured to be for the public. The conversations that we have are for us, and then we'll be hearing from the public, but it's not structured as like a further discussion of the budget, just so you know. And then this discussion about to do a continuing resolution or not to do a continuing resolution, I think has been extraordinarily useful. And I'll be interested to hear once Councilman Henderson watches this with popcorn, you know, when you can, and Councilwoman Knoll, you know, what additional thoughts they will bring to that. But I do want to point out that a concern that I have about not doing this as a package is we're talking about savings. Councilman Harvey, you brought up, you know, there's always got to be a way to tighten. I mean, multiple of us have said this. And yet, if we move into a secondary amendment, we know we need approximately $20 million to fire and police. It's going to cost money. In my district, I got people whose assessments have gone up 143%. That's real money, right? Opening it up and finding a whole bunch of goodies, to me, this is not Santa Clausville. It's not, you've said bacon, Councilman Clark. I personally am not going, I don't want to see bacon. I want to see, what do we need to serve the people of Chattanooga so that they have a fire and police response that is appropriate for the needs of our city. That is what I'm gonna be looking for as the representative of District 2, not a bunch of extra stuff. So, thank you.
I like that a lot. Thank you, Madam Chair. All right, so with that, any other questions for Kevin? All right, so this will end our budget education sessions. Just as a follow-up, I know Kim has gathered the questions that we have accumulated from here. And we have our public hearing at 3:30. We have strategic planning at 2 o'clock.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we have strategic planning at 2 o'clock with our public hearing at 3:30 that Madam Chair will be doing.
Oh, will I? Okay,
Yes,
but
I
we're
can do it.
actually gonna do it after the recess.
After the recess?
As we do typically with public hearings, that'll be
Okay.
after the recess.
All right, so after the recess, we will do our public hearing.
Phil, do we need
It has
an
been-
attorney-client today?
Not today.
Okay.
All right, great.
And it's okay to do it after the recess, because we've noticed it for 3:30. Right, okay, all right. So we'll do our public hearing, and as Madam Chair stated, that is literally for the public to tell us what they think about the budget, what they want to see, and things like that. It's not necessarily a dialogue, but we can take those questions and then bring them back to have further discussion if we need to. So with that, I think that is it. Thank you so much for a great budget education time.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I appreciate you all very much.
Thank you, staff. We appreciate
I
y'all.
look forward to any additional questions you have. And it's 11:05.